Lie 2.0. The headline over at HartmannReport.com is Trump and the GOP's Big Lie 2.0, their plan to shut down America this fall. There's really kind of two parts to this story. The first is that Donald Trump thinks that by shutting down the government, he is going to gain some benefit, that it'll just piss off people and they will direct their anger at President Biden. And if they're angry enough at President Biden because, you know, they're not getting their Social Security checks or Medicare's not paying the bills or the national parks are closed or whatever, you know, if they're sufficiently upset, then they will take that out on Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, and she being the vice president, of course. I think that's bad logic. I believe that history shows, outside of the one time that Newt Gingrich shut down the government in, what is it, 96, I think, or 97, and Bill Clinton got hurt by that. But other than that, every time Republican, and it's always been Republicans, Democrats have never shut down the government. But there's been 4 or 5 times that Republicans have shut down the government, and it sure seems to me like every time it's hurt them. But anyhow, the strategy that Trump wants to use to do this is requiring that in the must-pass budget legislation, which has to pass before the end of this month, the new fiscal year, 2025 fiscal year for the federal government begins on October 1st. So here we are, it's September 5th. So, you know, in roughly, what, 25 days, 26 days, it's going to be the end of the year. And if we don't appropriate money for next year, which starts October 1st, then the government shuts down. Now, you know, they'll do that dance. You know, Janet Yellen will, you know, find little money here and there, and, you know, it'll take about a month before it really bites hard, and which means that it goes right into October, which is the peak of early voting, and of course right up to the edge of November, and you know, we've got an election in the first week of November. So Trump thinks this is going to work, and he thinks that it'll work by inserting this provision in this must-pass budget legislation that says that in every state, when you register to vote, you must prove your citizenship. Now, the reason that they're pushing this is because they know that the lower on the income ladder a person is, the less likely they are to have proof, documentary proof, that they are a U.S. citizen. The more likely they are to have somewhere in their life have lost their birth certificate or have lost their change of name if they were married, and, you know, et cetera. So, and the lower people are on the economic ladder, the more likely they are to vote for Democrats. So Republicans know this. So number one, this is, you know, they're just throwing a barrier to voting. Number two, they also know that a lot of American women are seriously pissed off about the Dobbs decision and about 20 Republican states banning abortion. So why does that have anything to do with proving that you're a citizen when you register to vote? Well, according to the National Organization for Women, about 1/3 of all married women have a birth certificate with their maiden name on it, and yet today they use their married name, but they never went through the legal process, the formal legal process of applying to a state to change their name. And therefore, they're not eligible to vote because their citizenship documents and their actual ID show different names. So this could kick as many as, according to the National Organization for Women, 34% of all women in blue states where you know, we don't have this requirement by and large, and there's a handful of red states too. There's 5 red states right now that have this on the ballot this year. Could kick a lot of women off the voting rolls, which of course is exactly what Republicans want. Now, the basis of this entire thing is Big Lie 2.0. Big Lie 1.0 was Trump saying that, you know, he didn't lose the election, and we'll get to that in a little bit, because he just admitted that he lost. But in any case, you know, Trump lying about having, you know, the election stolen from him in 2020. That was Big Lie 1.0. Big Lie 2.0, which really, you know, maybe we should reverse the numbers, I'm not sure, but Big Lie 2.0, which they're reviving now for this piece of legislation, really started in 1964. In 1964, the New York Times reported that Republicans were convinced that the 1960 election was stolen from them by John Kennedy, And they were starting Operation Eagle Eye all across the United States to challenge voters to find those people who aren't actually citizens, to stand outside polling places and say, prove to me you're a citizen. And William Rehnquist, who worked his way all the way up to Supreme Court Chief Justice, was one of the leaders of this movement in Arizona, where he did this at the polling places that were heavily, used by Hispanics and Native Americans, particularly Hispanics. And Hispanics, of course, are the target of this in a big way, this time by Republicans. This big lie, then, has been used now for 60 years to justify a whole range of ways that Republicans prevent people from voting or get their votes rejected. For example, exact signature matching. They're saying that, illegal immigrants and voter fraud, all this kind of stuff, they're forging people's signatures on ballots. And so they're going to have, they're hoping to have 100,000 people observing signature matches on mail-in ballots, almost all in blue cities, mostly in red states. And if they say, if one of these Republicans says, hey, that signature doesn't match the signature you have on file, which is real common, by the way, with people over 40, because after 40, your signature starts to change. I don't know if it's that people get sloppy or what the deal is, but it's a known fact that your vote will not get counted unless you show up at the Secretary of State's office within 5 days of the election. So that's one way that they intend to actually reject millions of votes, using this claim that there's voter fraud. There is no voter fraud in the United States. There's no voter fraud anywhere in the developed world. We're the only democracy in the world that worries about voter fraud. Yeah, I know there was a scheme with regard to mail-in ballots busted in England a couple of years ago, but everybody knew that was the exception, not the rule. Same thing here. We had a Republican group in North Carolina that was buying mail-in ballots and forging them. They got busted. There has never been an election that was changed as a result of voter fraud. It's an irrelevant, insignificant thing. But Republicans have used it to make it harder to vote, to justify purges to the voting rolls. This is what Jeb Bush did when he took the list of felon voters from Texas and used it on a merge-purge basis against the voting rolls in Florida to bounce black and Hispanic voters off the voting rolls in Florida in 2000, just before his brother was elected president. Sort of. Was selected by the Supreme Court, but, another story. So my bottom line on this is that Democrats need to do what FDR did. They need to call this out. I played this clip yesterday on the program. I won't do it again, but, FDR said, here's Adolf Hitler's big strategy. Just tell the big lie and tell it over and over and over again, and ultimately people will believe it. And this is what they're doing. They're running around saying, oh, yeah, the Democrats are importing people from Mexico to vote, which is absolutely not true. It's a lie. But they're using this to justify preventing Americans, particularly Hispanic Americans and black Americans, from voting. And it's working for them. And my call for action is we need to call the damn media out on this, because for 60 years, the Republicans have been promulgating this lie. And for 60 years, the media has been just acting like, oh, yeah, maybe there's something legitimate here. There isn't. It's a lie. And we need to call it a lie. We should become, in most other European countries, in most other countries, if you're a citizen, you get a ballot in the mail, or you just show up and say, hi, I'm a citizen, I'm here to vote. That's it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We're literally the only country in the world that makes it hard to vote. Why? Because Republicans know if everybody could vote, no Republican would ever get elected again.